Hi, this is Dennis with thesoundadvisor.com. I want to talk to you about the 1176 plugin from Universal Audio, and I'm going to show you some tips, tricks, and just the basics and what the knobs and buttons do. So if you've never used one before, you're going to say there's something missing on this compressor, and that would be a threshold. Now if I just load up Protools basic compressor right here, you see this line right here, and that's the threshold. And I can lower the threshold by going like that, raise it up by going like that. So the threshold, again, is just the amount of, in this case, this is a guitar track. So it's the amount of guitar, the level of guitar, that is needed for the compressor to start reacting. So it would start compressing at that point, at that decibel level. If I bring that up, it's going to take a lot more guitar level before the compressor starts engaging. So let's go back to the 1176. Now, we're going to use the input knob to create a threshold. So think about it like this. If I bring up the input, which is sending more of that guitar into the compressor, I'm essentially lowering the threshold. And if I send less guitar into the compressor by lowering the input knob, then I am raising the threshold. Now the output knob is simply to make up gain lost in your compression. So if you're compressing the signal and you're taking off 5 dB over here of gain or something like that, you might want to increase this knob a little bit so your fader over in Pro Tools can remain where it was level-wise. Now these two knobs right here, the attack and release, now this is the first compressor, the hardware version, that had a super fast attack. And that is how fast the compressor reacts to the signal over the threshold. So if I actually, it's kind of reverse. If I crank this knob up all the way, it's actually the fastest attack time. So it would release. So after that signal went over the threshold, it's going to really clamp on it really fast, really hard. Boom. If I lower that, it's actually going to react slower to it. And same with the release. So all the way up is actually a very quick release time. So after the signal drops below the threshold, the compressor will stop compressing very rapidly. And when it's down, very slowly. It could be like a second or two or something like that. So these buttons right here are the ratios. So we have a 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, and 20-to-1. So sort of the basic thing is, so you have a 4-to-1, and that's a very gentle compression. 8-to-1, sort of gentle. And when you get up to the 12s and the 20-to-1, you're talking about limiting. So after the signal hits that threshold, this is how hard the audio is compressed or pushed back below the threshold. And when you start getting up here, you're talking about limiting. So it's going to allow very, very little audio over a threshold. Down here, it's going to allow a little bit more. So if you're doing a vocal, something like that, and you don't want it to sound compressed, you want to stay at about 4, 8-ish kind of thing. So the magic thing about the hardware version was you can take these buttons and jam them all in. You have to take all your fingers and just push. So if I hold down the shift key and click on them, it's doing the same thing. It's jamming all these buttons in. You saw this meter just jump, right? So they say that the compressor, I think, is doing like a 12-to-1 ratio, similar to this, but it's doing this weird pumping and breathing kind of thing. And it's more of a trick than anything. And if I take the attack time and the release time and push them all the way up, it's going to create this really cool effect. It's going to sound very compressed, okay? Now over here, the metering, I always leave it on gain reduction. It's pretty much the only thing I'm going to talk about. So that's just going to show you on the meter, and I'll just click it back to 4. If I were to play this guitar, it would show me how many decibels of, how many dBs it was reducing it by. So let me put this in bypass, and we can do that on this plugin just by hitting off. And we're going to listen. Just do a couple bars. Okay, so let's engage the compressor, and I'm going to put it back in gain reduction. And I'll leave it on a 4-to-1, and I'm just going to put it to their factory default, which is kind of a good place to start. So let's just play that, and we'll watch the meters jump a little bit, and it should be taken off, I don't know, we'll say about 3 dB or something when it hits a spike like this over here. Let's see what happens. Okay, we can see right there that it's doing very little. So I need to lower the threshold. So I'm going to add more input into it. I'm just going to bump it up to the next little notch there. I'm going to bring this back the same amount. So it's sort of the same volume as it was before. But what we should see this meter actually be reducing it quite a bit more. Okay, it's doing a little bit more. Now let's do one other thing. Let's bring up, actually let's add a little more input. Let's say just about there. We're not just going to do a gentle thing on this. So I'll just bring it up like half of that, half of this. We'll take another quick listen. You should see it jump a little bit more. Okay, now with the ratio, if I increase the ratio, you're now going to see this probably move a little bit more, but the audio difference is going to be pretty drastic, especially when I go to 20 to 1. Let's just put it on 12 so we see and maybe hear a little something different. Okay, now let's increase the attack, or decrease the attack time by turning this knob up. And I'll do the same with the release so we can really see this meter jumping around. And it should start sounding kind of funky. Okay, let's just do 20 to 1, see what happens there. And let me actually, so we see a little bit more happening. I'll turn this up a little bit and turn this back. And we can see the needle jumping quicker back and forth to the transients. So you actually kind of start hearing the compressor reacting more. Now if I hold down shift and hit all these buttons, watch what happens to this meter. And this is sort of the real funky mode of this compressor. You can add sort of distortion and a real funky kind of, I don't know, it's expander or something like that. But take a listen and see what you think. Well, that gives you the basics and some tips and tricks. I hope you liked them, and stay tuned for more. And if you want just a basic compression lesson, I have a video on that. It might help you out. So, thanks for watching.